All right, so once again, welcome. My name is Rock. This is part of the CCS Development Days, just one way that the community gives back to try and help people improve and hopefully enjoy the game more. And so today, I'm talking about Braxis Holdout. Val came up with the funny title of how the map is misunderstood, but definitely I think this is one of the most unpopular maps in HOTS, and I think for good reason. But hopefully today we will learn some new things, get you ready for playing it, and if you happen to play in competitive like NGS or something like that, you won't have to ban it all the time. So once again, most of the content today is brought to you by much smarter people than myself. I'm just like a diamond tank. So credit to the Nexus Schoolhouse, Not Paradox, and several other awesome content creators. So why I like Braxis Holdout? So Braxis is one of the maps that you actually do need good communication. Having team effort is huge. The map's pretty dominant on point control. The objective is obviously done by two players standing, hopefully, on the point at some point in time in the game. I like the map because it lets the offlaner shine. A lot of the time, the offlaners get stuck and they just become soak bots. So in this particular game, if you know how to outplay your offlaner, it is huge. Braxis Holdout's cool because it can be played multiple ways, which is really fun, but it's also really not why people like the map because there is too much to do. And the objective is fairly strong and valuable. It feels nice to be able to play for the objective and actually see your plan come to fruition and win through the objective. So it's not like Volskaya where you win the objective and you feel handicapped because the robot's not strong. Um, Braxis Holdout from several pro players and pro coaches talk about how this game is actually won in draft. During HUC, Cav guess, as the quote kind of stands up there, it has a lot of strategies, and so it wasn't popular in the pro scene. But it's not like most maps where you can kind of just cut it into a certain niche. Like you play Infernal Shrines. Are we playing for the shrine, or are we playing for macro? You go to play on Towers of Doom. Are we double soaking? Are we scaling? Are we, trying to get aggressive kills? It's very cut and clear. On Braxis, you can lose at draft. It's actually had the largest discrepancy between first and second pick in professional play during HEC times. And first pick often dictates the strategy of what they want for the map, and they can also deny potentially counters for what we're doing. So definitely making sure you have a good plan dictates a stronger chance of victory. And the other thing that is hard or difficult about this particular map is if you want to play it, you are essentially handicapping yourself by going second. So it never got picked in HGC just for that exact reason. Nobody wanted to pick it. Just a quick breakdown. It's a two-lane map. It's point control tug of war style versus some of the other ones that are out there as far as percentages. Obviously, you can only gain percentage when both points are capped. The congestion period is unique. Unless you move the bar past the 50% mark to the neutral standing, you standing on it does not stop the ticker from going up. It's not like some of the other maps. They changed it, if you haven't played the map in a while, to be more Dragonshire rules. So being able to communicate with your team, hey, we're almost there. We only have 10% left. Stand on the point. It's like we can stand and fight on the point, even though we might die to secure the objective, versus other times where you don't want to die because you're not going to win in the next 2 seconds of your life. And then some people forget about the globe generators. There's free globes on the top and bottom. Once you pick it up, it's every 45 seconds. So make sure to grab those, especially if you're a globe stacking quest. And then the map has 5 camps. And once again, the camps are almost never done. Each side has one hard, one easy between the knights and the siege. They spawn at 1 minute. And then there's a boss in the middle of the map that spawns at 5 minutes. And so when you're playing Braxis, we talked about how the game is a lot of the time won or has a strong edge at draft. So it's one of those things. It's like, what should I be drafting? The number one thing people talk about having on Braxis is a sustained healer. Regardless of which style you decide to play or what win condition you do, having a sustained healer is huge because the longer you can fight at the point, the better off you're going to be. You definitely don't want like an Uther. If you take Uther on Braxis, you're just going to get poked out, and Uther cannot secure or keep you guys in the fight for a long periods of time. Anyone out there in chat, what's a good sustained healer for Braxis, or what do you like playing there?
I like Brightwing to get the global value too.
Oh man, yeah, that gives us 2 check marks on our box, right? She has a global and she brings some nice sustained healing. Anyone else out there, a healer that you like that's on Braxis?
Yeah, Brightwing's always my go-to, but I also really like Stukov
Oh yeah,
with
Stukov's great.
silencing points.
Mm-hmm. Get point control as well as the green goo can be spread around. So definitely, those are the type of healers we're looking for. Obviously, one thing to consider, just like most point control maps, is wave clear. Obviously, I can't stand on the point and contest the point if I have to also catch the wave. So making sure that waves are soaked, but also being able to fight for the point when I need to. So with that, vision control is important. This map tends to get stuck in some very lock-headed 1 versus 4 matchups where the 4 are fighting 4 and eventually somebody dies and then they rotate back up to try and push off the 1 and then they rotate back down and try and take back the 4. So if you can see what's happening ahead of time, it gives you a lot of an advantage to secure safe D when soaking, as well as maybe camp invades or bosses. So don't forget, if you have the ability to take that tool, take it. Camping's important too. There's 4 camps on the map and a boss. So if you can get a camp while the waves are cleared, that's huge. Being able to have that additional pressure. One of the things to always remember about any camps, they give negative armor. One of the easy camp on the map has an armor stacking debuff, and so making sure to abuse that as much as possible. It's great for pushing, and it does bonus damage to heroes. Globals, like you mentioned with Brightwing, are big. Some strategies literally involve taking 2 or 3 globals and just abusing the fact that you can global all over the map. In some drafts, you may want an anchor. An anchor meaning someone that can hold their own on a point. So some typical anchors are like Junkrat or Chromie, stuff where you can safely clear and siege and not die. And if they try and siege into you hard, they at least have to tank it. So they have to at least hit it with their face instead of having the creeps clear it for them. Obviously, depending on what your style is, you may want a strong offlane counter or a good offlane. I know people love to have Rexar. It's absolutely the thing that if you play offlane and you don't have Rexar, we're not playing on Braxis. We're not playing on Dragonshire. But being able to pick not only a good hero, but also understanding what your counters are can be crucial in Braxis because you'll be spending a lot of time 1 versus 1 in some drafts. Don't forget to have a Zerg clearing or a Zerg defensive type of hero. The Zerg is going to happen. It always happens. And with the way that they've changed the map, there's a good chance that both teams will have Zerg. Very rarely do you have like a 100-0 Zerg. And then even with a 100-0 Zerg, the enemy team still gets some Zerglings. Instead, they just don't get a lot. But if they get any percentage, or even if your team gets any percentage, those are Zerg that are going to spawn. So it's very different, and most likely you will have to have someone defending against the Zerg. And then lastly, having some very good mobile heroes. Being able to rotate on this map can give you a huge advantage over the other team, especially if they draft a very kill-heavy comp, and so you've got 4 people in the bottom that are just trying to get kills. Well, you could safely clear and rotate one of your guys up there and bully their offlaner. And then if their offlaner dies, you guys can take camps, you can siege walls, you can play for percentage. This is another map like Dragonshire where having heads up and good communication and learning to push your advantage can really help you close out Braxis games. Popular heroes for drafting on Braxis. Actually, I'll go back. I'll cheat. What have you guys out there seen that kind of fit into these categories? We already mentioned Brightwing and we talked about Stukov. Any other heroes that kind of at the top of your head are like you pick Braxis and this is the hero you want, or this is the hero that you hate playing against on Braxis?
Phoenix.
Oh yeah, Phoenix is super strong. Phoenix is super cheeky in the fact that he can trade his shields for people's health. Him and Muradin both have that essentially instant regen when they're out of combat, so they have a lot of sustain on their own heroes. Phoenix can definitely anchor or offlane into some of the melee heroes and get those trades in his favor.
I see a lot of Junkrat for the kind of like goalieing of the point, and also for the kind of like rotations you can get with the mine over
Hmm.
terrain,
Oh yeah,
which can help out.
yeah. Junkrat's super strong, being able to control the point and clear and anchor. And then if you need him to rotate, he can, especially after 13 with Ripper Air, he can literally just like jump around the map for free. So yeah, being able to whether it be fighting and displace, and then his traps bring good vision, so that way he's harder to be ganked, as well as help him control the point, where we know like you guys are gonna have to step on that point eventually. There's a trap waiting for you, or it's like you stand on the point and you blow them off, and then it stops them from stealing the percentage from you. Maybe one more out there.
I've always liked Sylvanas on the map.
I definitely. Sylvanas is one of those um, create your own win condition, as well as any map that has a strong pushing objective, like the Zerg obviously run at buildings. So if you can turn off the buildings, Sylvanas is going to get a lot of value. So, all right. So kind of cheating. So here's whether it be from professional games or hot slogs or heroes profile, here's some of the popular heroes that people tend to draft on Braxis. I'm not going to call them all out by name. I'm just going to highlight a few and then kind of talk about maybe why you don't see them or why they are potentially picked. So, to highlight the tank slot for a second, both Muradin and Anub'arak are super popular for this map just because they can rotate over terrain. I should have put ETC on there too, but he has to take that talent at level 4. But they're very good at being able to just get around the map quickly, and then that creates unknown numbers up advantages for ganking the offlaners, or even just creating opportunities to do whether it be camp invades and things like that. But all three of those tanks can be very good vision tanks, as well as just getting over walls and creating chaos. Support, you can see I've pretty much listed every sustained healer support. You, and then DPS, I listed a lot of wave clear. The only other ones that I would say that are unique that I've listed there are Tracer and Valera. And so that's one of those things where if your team has a Tracer or a Valera player, you can do some very creative drafting on Braxis with those heroes in mind. Being able to rotate around the map or cut off rotations or get kills while teams are rotating or trying to do camp solo, Tracer and Valera can be a very big pain at making sure that the enemy team isn't allowed to do what they want to do. And then I called them anchors and wildcards over there. But if your team also has a Genji player, Genji is very, very strong on this map. He can cheese a lot of things. I should have put Medivh in there too. Can I like do this thing? Yeah, there we go. So that way I don't have to go back and fix it later. I can just give you guys the sheet. And then ETC with crowd surf. Cool. Go back in. All right. So just some things for food for thought. And so the question would be is why are these heroes popular? And so mainly because the point control is key. This map is so strong that if the enemy team does nothing but win every objective, there's a good chance they win the game. Just because the Zerg are that strong, they win on their own. So depending on your win condition, and when I say win condition, that's a whole nother like giant CCS development day type topic that Cascon and several others have done that if you have not seen those, they're in the library. But the short version, win condition is how do you win the map? And obviously people say you win the map by hitting the core. Like, yes. But to get to the core, there's a long way. So depending on your win condition, your strategy for the map, you need to find a way to control the points. And the one thing that people tend to overdo, similar to Dragonshire, is force holding both points. Just because you win one doesn't mean you immediately have to force yourself to win for the other. Um, One of the things you want to do, if anything, is making sure that you always have one. And so if you got to last pick and you see that their offlaner is Artanis and you can pick Rexxar, Rexxar is going to have the advantage top most of that game. So then if your 4-man is losing, that's okay because Rexxar is going to be winning his. So kind of identifying when you start at draft who has the advantage and who needs to be holding the point more consistently. So just being able to walk that together for the two different teams. As Cavalier Guest has stated earlier, you win in draft, and there's multiple ways to play this map. It's one of the reasons why first pick is so powerful on this map, is because you can pick heroes that fit into multiple of these categories and don't actually reveal what you're trying to do. As soon as you pick Abathur as an example, people know that you may be going for an Abathur solo heal. And Abathur has clear weaknesses in the fact that he cannot anti-siege. Sure, he can repair buildings, but like there's one less body on the map, and Abathur is going to get shoved really hard. And so some of these compositions almost have a rock, paper, scissors type of mentality to them. And depending on what win condition / composition you're going for, you will have to pivot if in draft if you pick things that are too constrained. So one of the things that you can do is the typical 4-1. And so most teams understand 4-1. They play 4-1 on this map, and they come down to fight comps and push comps. I think in HGC it was a Fnatic that started something called a double global in a 4-1 type of example. And so what they would do with double global is they would take like Dahaka and Falstad, and they would have Dahaka dig in to get a kill, and so they would win that bottom point and get 1 or 2 kills, and then Falstad would fly top, and you would essentially miss no soak. So now your team has just killed their people, and you haven't lost your soak or your point control. And so it became very annoying to deal with, and teams were trying to figure out how on earth do we counter this strategy, because you can't ban Falstad, you can't ban Dahaka, you just can't do it all. And so how do you make an adjustment, or how do you make a change? And as you're going through and looking at stuff, the question would be, what beats double global? And so they came up with a 2-3 composition, where essentially your goal is to punish the solo laner so hard that the enemy team has to respond. And so if they are a 4-1 traditional fight comp, so let's just say they have like Garrosh, Malfurion, Jaina, and Greymane. Sure. So their win condition is Garrosh is going to throw you over the wall. There's going to be a root, and Jaina's going to throw the blizzard on it, and if somehow you didn't die, Greymane's going to munch your face. So that's the way they win. They don't really care about top. They're just going to keep trying to kill you bottom all day. Well, that's great, except for when your top Rexxar is getting killed over and over again, and we lose the wall because we put Vala Ariel up there. And so the bear's constantly dead, so that we can't control the point. We're just sieging into poor Rexxar. The enemy team has to do something. They can't just let that two versus one happen forever. If they do, the two will eventually overcome the one, and you'll get the whole wall, the well. You just can't stay that way forever. Especially if the 3 ends up drafting some very good anchoring wave clear heroes. If you end up picking up like a Gul'dan, a Chromie, a Junkrat, you pick up something that is flexible enough to clear the waves safely, where you don't have to even engage in Garrosh's range. So the 4 of them are going to be sitting down there looking for picks, not getting anything, and they're going to have to change and react. So the 2-3 became the quote-unquote, the paper to the rock of the 4-1 and the double global. Well, then people are like, well, how do we beat 2-3? Because if they draft that, I can't draft a 4-1. So they ended up drafting a 1-3-1. And so a 1-3-1 in composition tends to be a anchor hero. Once again, we talked about Junkrat and we talked about Chromie, Gul'dan, Phoenix, someone that can anchor a lane for a period of time and effectively clear or safely trade out, and allow the 3-man, which potentially has some very good camp killers and rotations in it, whether it be Muradin, Greymane. Muradin and Greymane were pretty popular just because Greymane can run off and do camps, Muradin can jump over walls. You could put Muradin and Genji and a support in there, but the goal of the 1-3-1 is to pretty much always have a man up or always be doing something to where you're getting an advantage, whether that's ganking, getting camps, or even, punishing the 4 when they're overextending bottom. So, and then people were like, a 1-3-1 seems really strong, so what if we had essentially a global that was always available at any point in the game on any hero? And so solo Abathur heals came along. And so the team started drafting Abathur to be able to have a on 4-second cooldown, a shield, a heal, and bonus damage. And if 1-3-1s are popular, you need to see where are they going. How are they trying to gank me? Do we have vision control of what's happening? Abathur puts mines all over the battlefield. And so now Abathur is essentially defeating their rotations. Like they start rotating top and walk through a mine, top backs up, and a lot of the time on Braxis, if you play with an Abathur solo heal, you're only fighting quick burst fights. So you don't necessarily need a full-time healer. And so there's so many ways to play this map. I love that this last season of NGS, or 2 seasons ago, Cavalier Guest and Friends even ran an Ariel tank on this map, just because they needed to win through sustain. And so they out-sustain the enemy heroes by essentially drafting double support, but Ariel functioned as the tank. So hopefully that doesn't scare you off, that there's multiple ways to play this map. But essentially you get into this, what I would say, drafting paradox, right? And so if you like Big Bang Theory or you've read Cav's paper, they talk about rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. And so this idea that if you manage to draft correctly, you will have an advantage over the enemy team based on what type of composition you have. So if your enemy team is trying to do a push comp, they have like a Zarya, Greymane, a Nubarak, and I don't know, Medic, right? So they're trying to just hardcore siege bottom. Well, that's cool and all, but we could draft a 2-3 to where we are hyper sieging top and killing your offlaner, and the 3-man is still able to defend and hold on to their structures. So a 2-3, in essence, can beat a push comp. And then the same way, double global, sites like, was something that came into existence to try and help counter some of those other things. And so double global was beating a traditional 4-1. And so it's this weird thing where it keeps going in circles. There isn't really one particular one that always wins. So when you read through this, don't read this as only this one particular direction. So something to review or look at. And then once again, if you have solo healer Abathur, it's more or less equal to a 1-3-1, but has the potential to beat the 1-3-1 that goes with it. But then once again, once you get to solo healer Abathur, your push comp can outbeat Abathur just because that's Abathur's weakness, is he cannot help you siege or anti-siege stuff. So there was a lot of information there. So I'll just back up to this slide real quick, and I see a couple pings, so let me read through those real quick. So first question out there was Ragnos on the list. He's strong on the map because he's got Molten Core, the Deserved of Zerg, as well as Lava Wave. Do you know if he's typically or perhaps ideally chosen as an offlaner or in the 4-man with W build? I've come across many people that slam Rag on Braxis and then get destroyed in the 1v1, possibly because it's hard to play Rag correctly in a point control situation. So 100%. So if you were drafting Rag, Rag can go into your 4-1 fight comp. He can also be the offlaner. But the thing is that offlane Rag is not winning the point. Just flat out, he's not. And so if people are playing him to win the point, they're doing it wrong. And so the whole reason you draft Ragnaros is because you are nullifying the Zerg. It's almost like you're playing a composition where you don't care about the objective. Because as soon as the objective's up, you're just going to Lava Wave and Molten Core the objective away. So in that type of comp, that would be something that's kind of like a 4-1 push comp, where the 4 bottom, so that like Gray Main Zarya, Medic, a new Brack type of comp, is sieging really, really hard, and Rag doesn't really care if you take top point. As long as you're not sieging him back, he is just going to clear the wave safely, and then when the Zerg does get captured, he can Molten Core and clear it. So it's something that's definitely not too much of an issue. Second question I see here was, we talked about a 1-3-1. How about a 1-1-3 with a Tracer or Genji or something that roams fitting into this cycle? Is this a subset of one of the comps already displayed? Yes. So a 1-1-3 tends to fit into that double global 4-1 type of style, because the main goal of the 1-1-3 is you are going to be using that roamer to essentially kill the top laner, but also add advantages. So you're not fully committing to this 2-3, where the 2 is essentially trying to just fight 2v2. They're trying to just cut off rotations and be annoying. So Medivh and Tracer and Valera and Nova type of things can definitely fit into those dynamics. If there's specifically a X beats X, I think being able to use that hyper mobility works really well, especially into people who have drafted stronger quote unquote offlaners. So if you end up taking like a Nova or a Genji or a Valera into Rexxar, for example, as good as Rexxar is, Rexxar cannot survive himself being killed. Everybody knows that Rexxar is really Misha. And so if you're able to get to Rexxar, you can really punish him. And so Genji being able to dive over walls out of vision and constantly poke Rexxar can make it very advantageous. So I would kind of put that 1-1-3 with a hyper mobility still into that 4-1 type of idea. It's not the 1-3-1 where you're specifically anchoring and rotating as 3. So hopefully that makes sense. Anyone else questions, observations before I get to some high level just concepts, as well as showing off an Abathur draft, and then I was going to go to the map to talk about rotations, important camps, and stuff like that. All right, awesome, cool. So obviously, if you do a 4-1 type of composition, it's your typical offlane, a tank, a healer, some sort of wave clear, and then someone that's probably a camper or sustained damage. Obviously, depending on your 4-1, you have different win conditions, but the 4-man rotations can be very predictable, and so that's something that obviously is a good and a bad. It makes it easy to play early on when your team's still learning or in a Storm League environment. Everyone kind of knows where they're supposed to go or knows what they're supposed to do. But there's obviously some cons to that. If you draft a 4-1 and the enemy team does happen to get Genji or Medivh or just has more of a hyper-mobile team, doesn't have to necessarily go all in, but they get more globals than you, then you may have a problem with your offlane. Or you may have a problem capturing camps and doing other things on the map. So just something to be watching out for as you go through it. And then obviously a 1-3-1 tends to look like a offlane, a tank healer, and a wave clear / merking hero that will be running around with your 3-man, and then you have an anchor. And once again, those anchor heroes tend to be like Chromie, Junkrat, Gul'dan, Phoenix. So just stuff that has good wave clear and good self-sustain, as well as just survivability and safety. So then you have your 2-3 compositions. So your 2-3 compositions, they tend to be a little bit more, these aren't like cut in stone. Just remember that the goal of the 2-3 is that you're going to be beating / pressuring top, or whatever the off lane happens to be. If your team somehow awkwardly runs into like 2 bottom, 3 top, or whatever, just whatever the winning lane is versus their 1-man off lane, you want to be so aggressive that you're either killing that person or you're actively sieging so hard that they can't play for the point and for controlling their wave. So some examples there are like a Greymane Zarya or a Vala Ariel are both really cool two-man compositions that are up in the top. Those aren't the only ones. Just an example of what that looks like. And then in your three-man, if you're going to be committing to a hyper-aggressive top type thing, you need a very good anti-siege wave clear hero, like Gul'dan, like Junkrat, like Chromie, something that is safe and is able to get those clears until more or less the four-man on the enemy team has to break their four-man. That example I gave earlier of Garrosh, Gul'dan, or Garrosh, Malfurion, Jaina, and Greymane, they're really strong together. Like Greymane's got the siege, Jaina's got the clear, they've got burst, they've got CC. But if you take away one of those pieces, they're not as strong or as scary in that department. And so, if you've got a Dahaka top that's trying to live versus Vala Ariel, someone's gonna have to go help Dahaka. He can't do anything. Like he's just crying, trying to burrow underground and kill what he can for essence. And so, who do you send? If you send Greymane, okay, fine, but now you don't have camps and you don't have siege. And so the kill pressure from their team is a lot less if Jaina's Blizzard's down. Let's say we send Jaina. Okay, cool. Jaina has effectively fixed the wave clear problem top, but now they have no wave clear bottom. And so the bottom three-man is out wave clearing and taking the point. So there's this weird tug of war that you want to create in your 2-3 compositions. And if the two top is not getting enough threat and is not scary enough, it's not going to work. Because they're just going to out-siege you bottom, and you're not going to get that equal or advantage. And so that's why that 1-3-1 really comes down to good communication and being able to do what's best when the advantage is up. If you're able to go top, pressure that offlaner to where he has to back or he has to tap, great. The four of you start sieging top really hard. We don't care if we give bottom. We already control top point. The three just rotated up there. Just siege really hard. And if the four of them don't respond, you should be able to outvalue them top with the heroes that you've drafted. And so, yeah, it's a really fun dynamic, but it's also really hard because if you have drafted a hero to do a job, he can't do all the jobs. For example, a lot of people like taking Jaina now for not only wave clear, but for murking. They're like, yeah, you take that cool, Ice Fury wand on 7, and Jaina's now, a Greymane when it comes to camps. That's true. But Jaina can't do the camp and wave clear at the same time. Like, even with Ice Fury wand, she can't do both. So you have to make sure that you don't draft yourself into a hole or get outdrafted because the core of our team is Jaina wave clearing, and then Jaina's never here to wave clear. So, yeah, just being able to make sure we don't get too far behind at draft. Lastly, I wanted to show you a solo Abathur comp. I will link this presentation to everybody afterwards. It was a cool HGC match, as you can see here, Team Freedom versus Gale Force Esports, and some very popular heroes that are still playing today in CCL. You've got Lutano and Nasmus, as well as our good friends of Mikey Udall and B-Kid and Fury were all playing until last season. So it's a very fun game. If you've never seen this one, it's a classic. They went there as their game 5, so it was a do or die, and the solo here, Abathur, definitely I think caught them off guard because they drafted a lot of rotation heroes too. You can see between having Maiev and Hanzo, both of them can rotate very well. Hanzo can anchor. His wave clear isn't the best, but he can anchor really well with vision and leap. And so, as much as they wanted to rotate, they just couldn't do anything. They end up getting their rotations were slowed down by Abathur, so they were never in threat. Abathur's hats were able to keep people alive. It was a really fun match. So both that is timestamped here and the Masters League if you want to download the replay file and watch how one of them play. So before I go to the map, because I'm going to pull up Buddha's tools and go over the map and draw on it, is there anything else? Because I'm going to talk about how to press the advantage on Braxis and how to play from behind on Braxis before we continue. All right, no problem. Okay, so typically, like I said, when you go through and you're doing this map, people tend to play in a typical 4-1 situation where you have 4 down here and 1 up here. And so the thing that you want to do when you are in draft is you want to know what is your game plan playing into this one. If you happen to have first pick, because we're playing Storm League and they give you Braxis Holdout and your first pick, what is, based on all the stuff that we've kind of talked about, who do you think would be a good flexible pick that you could do and be able to potentially use any of those strategies? Whose name have we heard a million times that would be a key hero no matter what strategy we go with? That would be a safe pick for Braxis.
Braxis.
Rexar. All right. So we're gonna take Rexar. First pick Rexar. So let's say. So we first pick Rexar. Bam. So now we've got our offlane secured. The enemy team sees that we have a Rexar, and they're like, okay, well, our offlane's kind of screwed, so why don't we grab some high wave clear? So we're going to take, Gul'dan, and we'll get a really cool healer that'll help us do the traditional Gul'dan Ariel combo, because everyone knows that that's awesome, right? So then what do we want to do next here? So we've got Rexar, so we've got our either point control and or anchor. Maybe. So we've got we've got someone that can kind of do both. We see they have Gul'dan Ariel. What are we looking to do? What are we trying to grab here? So for me, to stay flexible, because I don't know what I want to do with this Rexar yet, right? I know that he's really good in the 1v1 if I need him to be, and I know I can leave him as an anchor if I need him to be. So I'm going to stay flexible, and I'm going to grab Muradin and Greymane. Oops, that's the wrong color. Go away. No, I forget. Whatever. You're over here now. Yeah, so we're going to grab Muradin and Greymane. And the main reason I'm grabbing those is, yes, Muradin can rotate around. He's a tanky body, and so he can help stay on the point a little bit longer. And Greymane, being on the left-hand side here, he can kind of peel off and do this camp real quick, even if we just decide to stay with a typical 4-1. So, all right, enemy team doesn't have any rotation heroes. We ban Genji. We're like, we don't want to deal with that crap. So what does red team want still? Red team needs a tank, needs a some sort of DPS, and needs an offlaner. So I don't know. If I was red, I'd probably try and hold my offlane last, just to see if there's anything that I can do. Maybe someone on the team knows how to play Deathwing. Deathwing's not in this pool of heroes here, but people tend to say Deathwing is the counter to Rexar, so you can potentially do that, or even Kira. So, but yeah, I would just say I'm just gonna fill out the rest of this draft just so we can keep talking about it. So let's just say that the enemy team grabs the Diablo and grabs. Let's go with a. Let's go with the False Dead. So we got a global that can help out because we saw that we're going to lose versus our Rexar. And then we've got obviously infinite sustain and great wave clear with these three down here. And so blue team needs wave clear and stuff figured out too. So somehow Junkrat made it through the draft, and Junkrat's now here. And we've got a healer we need, so let's grab big beefy arm Stukov, because we talked about earlier how he's great on sustain heals. And then we need a last minute rotation up here, and so we're going to try to out global them with Dahaka. So we're going to go with a double global strat.
Could Red also pivot and put Gul'dan or Oriole up top and run a 2-3?
Hey, I like it. Let's do it. So we've flexibly decided to move these guys here. And so if we're doing a 2-3, I'm going to dump this Falstad because that no longer works. So if we're going to do a 2-3, let's go ahead and pick up what's a high sustained wave clear hero, or just a high wave clear hero that can go with essentially this. Well, I guess we haven't technically picked Diablo either yet, but whatever. Just what's a high sustain wave clear hero that we could pick to go down here bottom?
I would think about like a Valazaria.
A Valazaria in the bottom there?
Yeah, to get like a 2/3.
Oh, you want the
Yeah,
two up top to be Valazaria and leave the
yeah,
Gul'dan Ariel down
that's
here?
what I would think about.
All right, let's do that. So if we were to do something like this.
If you're drafting Vala, couldn't you do the Gul'dan up top with the Zarya and leave the Vala bottom with the Oriole?
Either way.
Because the Vala doesn't have much self-sustain outside of the shield.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So you could run something like this. The main thing I'd worry about this version is the wave clears a lot less. So if you're going to do that, potentially doing like this, then, you know what I mean? Like, this is flexible, which is kind of nice, depending on what you want to do. If you're battling into Rexar, right, you're like, oh, we need to be flexible, we need this stuff. And then, yeah, just trying to figure out what works. So one team has drafted what appears to be a 4-1, and the other side has drafted a 2-3, right? So we walk up the lanes, da-da-da-da, there's a Rexar, he sees that there's 2 top, he calls out there's 2 top, and so blue team has drafted flexibly enough that they're actually going to run a 1-3-1 now. Right? So now you've got Junkrat being able to hopefully clear lanes and can send these 3 to take a, 4 versus 2 type of environment as often as they can. And they may not win this still. Right? Like, their wave clear isn't phenomenal, but like they are pretty sustainy. And so the question becomes, like, does this 4 outrace these 3? I don't know. This would be a fun one to play out and see. But this is why the map becomes so difficult, especially when picking first. Because first now has that choice. Like, we started with a great flexible draft even on the right side with Gul'dan Ariel. And we've, pivoted into a 2-3. And now that we're in this 2-3, it's like, what works? And one of the things that sucks, which, maybe we didn't have to pick Diablo, but now that we've gotten Diablo, like, Diablo really, as much as he can reach to reach Junkrat, he's not going to get any kills. So then potentially we have another 2-3, right? Like, we send Diablo up here to start helping them in these 2 siege, and now we have, then the 3-1 rotates back and tries to punish them and siege and gets an advantage. And so it's one of those things that becomes, not only did you win in draft, but are you actually playing your draft correctly? So I'd like to see this one. This looks like fun. The other highlighting and notes things to kind of look at and remember about this map. So one of the things that's kind of unfortunate, and you can't really control it, is the I think if you, like, depending on which side of the map you're on, which you'll know when you load in because of the colors. I believe blue is always on the left here, and red is always on the right. I could be wrong on that. But whatever one it is, it's always the same. But the bottom lane has a clear advantage in lane. They have this camp here, is so close to their point. So if you know you're that side, even just being able to clear this and grab this camp quickly makes things so much easier compared to if this was a traditional 4-man down in this section. Because this 4-man cannot, they can't get to this camp easily, and it takes them longer to clear it most of the time. So being able to actually have this group come up and do a quick camp can be a big advantage. Yeah, so then the last 2 things I wanted to talk about were pressing the advantage and playing from behind. So most games, 1 through 10, before 10s happen, is going to come down to how much point percent control did you have, and how much wave clear siege did you get completed. Eventually, these will get capped. It's not Alterac Pass where, you can get to 20 minutes and never actually cap something, just because people don't want to fight. So one of the things you want to do if you're ahead, so let's pretend that it's a standard 4-1 versus 4-1, and it's nothing crazy, but we have green team gets a kill on down here. So now they have point already because they got the kill. How exactly do you decide what to do? Because you only have maybe 10 seconds while their person's dead. So if the 4 is still down here, and let's say that the 4 has Sylvanas, Kel'Thas, Garrosh, and Medic. I don't know why you'd pick Medic. Did I not put Lucio on my list? Oh my gosh, where's Lucio? Hold on, I need to fix that right now before I forget. I'm an idiot. Get that Lucio in there. All right, going back. So, as you have your 4 down here, you just got to kill. What would be, what would be awesome for this 4-man to do with their 10 seconds of dead time? Right? We'll just assume that it's even up here or we're losing top. Any ideas on how this team should try to press their advantage?
Probably try and pop the black arrows and go for that fountain bot lane.
Yeah, either we're looking for either a camp invade or we're looking to hard siege this building, right? Just trying to find a way to do that. Definitely having Sylvanas gives us some flexibility because we can siege the building or we can steal their camp. But, you know, I don't know what they have on their team. Let's just pretend, since this will help us make a decision. I don't know who we killed, but they still have Gul'dan on their team. Wow, I can't spell because I am not finding the letter G. They still have Gul'dan on their team, right? So we don't necessarily want a hard siege into Gul'dan. Sure, he's behind the wall and he's clearing the waves and he's picking at us. We can, but to your point, maybe we do the camp instead because we don't really care if Gul'dan's hitting us at the camp. And then once we get this camp, you know, their person just respawned. We can now support the camp with maybe Merc Queen and disabling the towers. Or we can, you know, rotate up to top and get a kill. Right? Like the idea is that like we're trying to effectively use the small amount of time we have. Very rarely before 10 is it the right call to rotate like so many numbers of players bottom to up to top to control the point. Like you don't have enough time to do that. And then if you send all 4, then whoever's bottom can just reclaim this for free. And so especially if you don't have someone that can like anchor strongly, at best you can send 1 to 2 players top then. Right? Like if this was our comp, I would probably send Sylvanas top. And even then, like she may not get the point, but she can, you know, teleport over the wall at least, like woo, little Banshee thing, and maybe get some percentage. But it's still not really optimal. And by the time, you know, you get a kill, she walks over to here, Banshee, you know, wiggles over to here. Like, maybe you get some percentage, but the 3v3 that was down here is now fighting you for this point, and the advantage you had is gone. And so that's where a lot of that communication and big picture strategy comes into place for this map. So like that's all pre-10, right? So pre-10, you want to be jockeying for the point, but you want to be getting an advantage on the map through sieging buildings and sieging walls and taking camps. The only real time that you're going to control both is if you get multiple kills or you've got the map under your control so strongly that you can hold both points. So if your team, as an example, did have Rexar, so we'll round up this 5-man team here, and we'll STR. Okay, so if your 5-man team has Rexar, Rexar's already got the point, right? He's happy, he's got his bear, he's winning the point. So you get a kill, and now you hold the point here. So if Rexar's already winning his lane, say it's like we can siege real hard, or we can invade, or we can do something on that end, and definitely take an advantage. But if we're behind, right, like we don't want to lose the Zerg. The Zerg is very strong. And so it's like, what do? We have to react. Obviously, we only have 3 heroes down here. We'll pretend that the rest of his team is... let's give Muradin. Let's at least give them something decent. So we've got a Muradin and a Lucio. And the dead player doesn't really matter. And then top is Rag. Right? So we thought our team was never going to lose bottom, and our, you know, dummy died somehow. So we have to make a change. We can't just like sit down here as 3 and try to win this 4 back. So we're going to have to overcommit resources and win this point. And that sucks. But when we overcommit resources, we can't send everyone, especially into Sylvanas. They're going to get that. So we send Muradin and Lucio up to try and hold the point. We may have to pivot our strategy for the next minute and a half to having 4 top and just leaving Gul'dan bottom. Because we have to get equal value or force this 4-man to break up. Because this 4-man is very strong. Like, this is one of those traditional 4-1 compositions where if they drafted a Rexar early, hopefully you can either kill Rexar or force them to do something else. So, if you can leave Gul'dan down here, and let's just say we took a sustained damage dealer, so let's say that we picked, not Lunara, sure, we took, Vala seems pretty squished into this team. I don't think we would have taken Vala. Whatever, I can't think. We'll just take Vala. So, sorry, I'm like, so the 4 of us, now we've got Rag, Lucio, Muradin top. We're definitely going to win this point now. And can we then take Vala Lucio and, do this camp? Or find other ways to force this 4-man to break up? And if we can't, we're just going to have to get equal trade eventually. So, it's hard, pre-10, to make a lot of changes. The one thing that is beneficial to Red Team is that obviously we took Rag. And so we kind of knew that we were going to give up top, and we were hoping that our Vala and Gul'dan were going to outscale and, beat them long term. Which is a possibility, maybe. So the next thing you want to be looking for is how do we keep the advantage, or how do we come back post-10? So post-10s, it's almost counterintuitive, but you have to, when you're behind on this map and the points are up, you need to just 5-man deathball to make something happen. Like, you're already losing. Like, right? Like, if the point is at 50%, and lose hard. So if the point's at 50% already, and you just all 5 rezzed, right? Like, whatever happened, all 5 of you are alive. If all 5 of you run to this point, you will win it. Right? Because, like, they will have people showing in lane, they'll have something going on, but your 5-man death ball needs to make things happen. So you come and you take this point, and as soon as you take this point, you look to invade this camp. And then if they come to take this point, the 5 of you again come back to this camp. And you just got to try to recover and get the map back under control. Because one of the problems with this map is that once all the camps are taken, the boss becomes a very strong win condition. And so the boss itself doesn't tend to win the game for you, but it's very strong. It's kind of like the bosses on Warhead Junction. Or sorry, that's not a good example. Warhead Junction's boss is very strong. The boss on Spider Queen. That boss is not necessarily super amazing, but it can get you value and it can open up that win condition in that lane. Since this boss doesn't always go to the same lane, I forget if it's based on structure or if it's random. I think it's based on whatever lane has the most structures is which lane the boss goes to. But since the boss can help you win and can help you recover, taking that 5-man death ball and then taking a boss can help you get your percentage back. And that is something that you can do when you're trying to come back in this game. If they let the boss push on its own, it will take down buildings. It's not going to win the game, but it will do damage to them structurally. And so if they go to defend, now your team can play for point control again and reset the map. So, yeah, there is a lot of ways to be able to try and make comebacks, but it has to be together. And in a Storm League type environment, I'm sorry, it's hard. There's a reason why people don't like playing this map. Besides all of the complex drafting and things that can be done, it tends to be called snowbally. And I would probably agree that if you win that first Zerg, you have a very strong chance of winning the next couple of objectives. Because you win that first Zerg, you probably got a whole fort, right? The whole fort top here is gone because the Zerg won. And so what do? Well, the 4-man now can run all the way over here on this half of the map, you know, without fear because there's no fort of safety for them to run to. So, and then they can leave their offlaner, their offlaner can just anchor bottom next to the walls. And you're like, I don't care. I'm safe. So, when the team is able to take what was a, more or less a 50-50 split, right? It's kind of split this way as far as like field of safety and stuff, and they're able to change it to 60% of the map is now in their favor. It's very scary, and so it's hard to come back from this position without that 5-man death ball roaming around and just trying to like paint the map red or blue, whatever your color is. So, and then once again to finish up on pushing your advantage, if you are winning, so say you won the first Zerg and the 4-man knocked down the row that they were in, don't let the 4-man sit way up here and try to push into this building. Don't do that. Right? This now, in the same way that you have control over this map, you now have a very long route to safety. For you to get all the way back here means that their 5-man death ball, right, their only chance they come back, the 5-man death ball just came in from behind because we were so far sieging up on this lane. We really don't want to do that. If the 4-man is the one that's winning and the reason you're winning, move them down to bot lane. Switch lanes and start sieging again. Right? Like, don't, just because the off lane started top or just because it started bottom doesn't mean they have to live there forever. Let them rotate. Let them take the advantages where they can get them. So, there's a lot more. I have a few more minutes of things I wanted to talk about, but I also see it's 3 o'clock. So if you have another session to go to, thank you so much for joining me. I had a lot of fun talking about the map. I will quickly open up the floor for anyone that's leaving and going to another session, so that way you're not late to your next Dev Day questions and answers. So anyone out there, final questions or things I can answer for you before the next session starts at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I was curious, why is Medic strong on the map? Because, like, you said sustained healers, but if once at a certain point she just runs out of energy, and she runs out of healing quicker than, like, a Lucio or Malfurion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Medic is underrated on this map. If we're the question is how much are we feeding, I guess, if Medic's running out of energy. But the reason that she's considered a sustained healer in that aspect is that she doesn't have a mana bar, right? Like, the team, when she has mana or when she has energy, she's able to push up and do a lot of work. It's the same thing with Ariel. Ariel technically is you could argue is a burst heal, right? Like, she has one heal and then she has no heals. But the fact that she never has to leave the lane to get heals makes her sustained. And the same thing with Medic. So Medic can heal the team over time quickly. Anytime someone from your 4-man has to go back to the well is an opportunity for them to invade this point or make a play. And so if you can out-sustain them heal-wise, as well as, everything else on the map resource-wise, he'll give you that slight edge. So, anyone else? Questions, observations about Braxis? All right. Once again, thank you guys. If you're taking off to the other session, no harm, no foul. You're more than welcome to jump out. If you want to stay for 1 or 2 more examples, I was going to do that, and then I'm all finished. So thank you again for joining and for hanging out with us. So it's going to do my last 2 examples. So
Thank you. This is super helpful.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you. So, all right. So it's Erase All the Heroes. So we talked about briefly the 2-3 and the 4-1. So what I wanted to do is cover something that people typically don't see on Braxis, and that's how to handle potentially a hammer comp. So a lot of the times when we're playing Braxis, people think of 4-1s, and it's like they're like, oh, we're just gonna fight over the point or we're gonna kill them. Like, what if you just have an unmovable object, right? Like, if you guys manage to ban out, you start the game and you ban Junkrat and Chromie, right? So just right out of the gate, that's two strong anchors, strong ranged heroes that can try and hit a hammer, right? And so you don't want to pick your hammer early, but you can see a bunch of professional play back in the day. If you look up on masterleague.net or search HEC, people played hammer on this map. And that's just because hammer gives you so much vision and point control that she's able to slowly chip away at these buildings while also remaining somewhat safe and being able to fight for the points. So, sure, just like many other heroes, maybe your niche, like Hammer, doesn't get drafted all the time, and Medivh is super strong and doesn't get drafted all the time, and Genji is super strong on this map and doesn't get drafted all the time. It's being able to answer those questions. And so if the enemy team sets up a strong push comp with like a Hammer, and then an Anubarak, or no, they want probably more of a defensive tank. They probably want like a Joe. So they have like a Hammer, a Joe, and then some wave clear. Sure, they have Jaina, and then they have a healer that can sustain them and keep them alive forever, Lucio. So actually, probably Brightwing would be better, because Brightwing's got anti-dive as well as a Z to keep the hammer alive. So if the 4-man is something like this, of a protect hammer comp, this can be really annoying to deal with, because they can potentially out-siege a lot of people. And so you may get stuck having to have the right tools to handle this, or being able to just race them. And I don't know if you've ever played those games of chicken before with other teams, where it used to happen in Storm League every once in a while for fun, where like all 5 people show up top, and they just run it down, and they try and siege this wall as 5, and so they'll get this, whether it be Sylvanas or not or whatever, but they just don't leave. Like they take like Greymane, Zarya, Medic, and probably Nubarak. That'd be probably a pretty good fit. Maybe not a Nubarak, because Nubarak beetles are also weird with the stuff that's there. So let's take Blaze. But yeah, you have something like this. It's like, and they're trying to out siege and just race the buildings down, versus something like this. Sure, this team sieges, and it's like, I'm an immovable object. You're never gonna get past me. And it's one of those things where you're like, that's cool. I don't want to fight you, right? Like, as much as this is annoying to play into, like, you don't have to fight them. You don't have to play into the hammer. You want to dissect. You want to dissect what is their strengths and make sure that you can push the advantage. So if you're playing into a hammer comp, and the main usual counters have been banned, like there's no Chromie, there's no Junkrat, you don't have tons of dive, there's no Anubarak. They took out all of the tools that you would want, or to be able to engage here. Maybe no Maiev. Just what can you do to fight this? Sometimes the answer is don't. Sometimes it's, beat them at their own game and race. Being this 2-lane map, it's super awkward. Yeah. So the other couple tips and tricks is Genji and Medivh. So both of these heroes, and I'll pull up Abathur too, I guess. So these 3 heroes can almost make their own drafts. So if your team potentially can play one of these 3 heroes and likes them, you can make some very unique custom drafts. So a solo Abathur game, once again, if you jumped in late or came late, I have a VOD and a link here to one of the pro games back in HEC days. HEC days when they ran solo support Abathur. Very cool game to watch and check out. But Abathur himself does not do a lot for the map. Abathur is going to be empowering your team. So you need to make sure that you're not taking long sustained fights. Abathur's coming in to give vision, and he's going to give support to those who are in need. So in your 1v1s in the top lanes, or whatever that ideal scenario is, giving your players the ability to outplay the others by having an Abathur hat jump in and help. Similarly, Genji is super annoying for this map because he only has good rotations, right? He can E and then D over and be able to jump over the map in less than 2 seconds. He also can cheese the boss. And so if you've never seen a Genji on the boss, the Genji does more damage based on how many times he is hit in Reflect. It's not what he reflects, but the number of instances of getting hit. The boss has a line mechanic where he shoots in a line very, very fast, which means that Genji's deflect hits the boss a million times. There's probably a video out there somewhere of Fan soloing the boss as Genji just to show off that it can be done. So one of the things that you have to watch out for if the enemy team has a Genji is that they can cheese the boss. So once again, the boss is not game winning on this map, but the boss does enable the enemy team to get the point percentages, because you can't just leave the boss alone, but you also don't want to. You can't do both. You can't hold the points and clear the boss. So it's the quote unquote comeback mechanic on the map when you're not able to 5-man wipe them to get this. This is like a leverage piece to force them to move. And then the other hero, just like any map, if your team can play Medivh, he's really strong on this map. Yes, he can float over walls as a bird and give a +1 advantage, but if Medivh will continue to pretend that we'll just put Medivh on red team for a second. So red team has an easier rotation path to this gas vent from about right here. Medivh can portal his team to here. And so you're able to have a very quick rotation to gank the top offlaner when they may not be expecting it, especially since Medivh can place portals with his level 1 talent without having to be there. So Medivh can be like giving vision all the way up here. Oops, I can draw Medivh. He can be giving vision way up here, and the team can say portal now, and he can drop the portal, and they can come in and gank and fight this point. And so having Medivh be able to enable rotations quickly, as well as even invade camps, is super strong. So always be on guard for Medivh, Genji, and Abathur things. Some other heroes that can cheese or make this map feel very awkward is we already talked about Ragnaros briefly earlier when Valkspy brought it up, but the other one is Phoenix. So both Rag and Phoenix can neutralize or make the objective very, very weak. So as you can see up here in these little canisters in the red and the blue, the Zerg build up. And so they always get dumped in the same path, the path like right here. And so this path is a beam target. Phoenix can just line up from anywhere on the map and shoot his meme beam all the way down, and he can kill half the Zerg before they exit out of that hatch. And so it's another thing that potentially you want to be looking at drafting or doing is if you're planning that your team is going to lose the Zerg, drafting a Phoenix or a Ragnaros to help clear these is really good. So that's everything I had planned. I do not have anything else. If anyone's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for a couple quick minutes, but I am all done. So
well done.
Hey,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. And once again, I'll have this recorded and I'll post it to YouTube here in a couple seconds. Sweet. Have a great day, everyone. And I'll catch up with you later.